Imagine opening your email to find years of history deleted. Only a single email remains. A ransomware request for $2 million. You think to yourself, how could this happen to me? You see, there's two types of companies. Those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. The weight of responsibility comes crashing down on you. It's the sort of responsibility you feel when your family is craving a delicious pizza. You finally open the box only to find the most cringe-worthy topping that you mistakenly ordered. Join Pineapple on Pizza podcast as John and George, along with guest executives, discuss the most common and craziest cybersecurity risks, followed by actionable tips and strategies that can be implemented to protect your cyber risk pie. Pineapple on Pizza is hosted by Omnistruct.
Welcome to another episode of Pineapple on Pizza. I'm one of your hosts, John, president of Omnistruct. I'm a world-traveling scuba diver who is often mistaken for Old Saint Nick himself. And I like to think I have a world-class personality. I'm accompanied by George Jusey, who's also the CEO of Omnistruct. He's also a banging blacksmith and a board member with Secure the Village, while also volunteering with the IPv6 task force. And today, we're joined by a CEO and vCISO of CyberCulture. He's an avid runner and a family man, Ranbir Bhutani. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. So we've got our first question for you, starting out here easily, right? It's our epic question of the day. If cyber risk was a pizza, what's the riskiest topping you have seen, and what topping would you equate it to?
That is an absolutely amazing question. I think based on that question, the riskiest topic would be, maybe putting anchovies on your pizza might be questionable. Not everybo's a fan, and not that those toppings are not available according to the pizza business. But yeah, I'd say that's pretty up there.
and how would you equate that to something that you've seen, either customers or somebody doing, that risk factor, right? How putting in, if you got a pizza for all your kids and everything else, and you put anchovies on it, now what?
Well, it's sort of what to your taste buds, right? But in relation to the cyber world, both of you seen it, I've seen it. I think the riskiest component is when you have an organization and they allow their employees to use their personal laptops, where you have no insight to it, or knowing, let's say, if they're updated on the latest patches or operating system. Not to get too technical, but I think that's really where it starts, because the idea is that an employee clicks on a phishing link, for example, through corporate email access, right? Yes, maybe they come in via VPN, but of course it introduces, like, let's say, malware, ransomware, phishing campaign, and now you have bigger problems. So that's really where it all starts, right?
So at least their anchovy.
Yeah,
that's their anchovy on the pizza. Well, great. I appreciate that.
Of course.
All right. So in regards to your role as CEO and vCISO, what's been keeping you up at night?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's been necessarily keeping me up at night, but the thoughts just raced through my mind as far as either organizations, they care about the safety or the protection of their sensitive data, for example, if they're housing any or storing any, versus if they have somewhat of a cyber program in place, but kind of don't really understand what are the next steps, because it's really all relative as far as having compliance, security stack technologies. You sort of put everything hand in hand, doing the, for example, penetration testings on a consistent basis, spreading security awareness training. Your employees, they have access, to your organization, to your networks, through sensitive information. So naturally, it really seems like it's all over the place, but it's honing in for business owners, lead C-level executives, board of directors, and understanding a story as far as how to build an effective program, A, and B, educating your employees, and C, of course, having the technologies and the compliance in place. It's many different moving components and pieces, if that makes sense.
It completely makes sense, and I agree with you. So what do you find to be the best way to have them stick with a cybersecurity program?
Well, it starts at the top, right? As business owners, we sometimes fail to do it our own selves as far as making sure, we have protections in place and making sure employees are understanding the importance of if they see anything suspicious and malicious. And really what keeps a lot of business owners or organizations up at night, especially if they're handling or managing sensitive data, if they'll be a target of a next breach or cyber attack. And I mean, I don't have to say it here. Both of you know, John and George, that the big names, anybody's hackable, even the big names, right? I mean, even companies selling security, they get hacked. But the truth be told is, do your checks and balances. Yes, auditing is and oversight is one part of it, and compliance is sort of puts the puzzle pieces together. But really, that's where cyber has come. And at the end of the day, what is cybersecurity? Risk management. What is the level of risk an organization is willing to accept, or based on some of the programs, and even with the combination of technologies and people, it's people, data, environment, cost at the end of the day, right?
And do you use a framework for managing this?
Yeah, no, there's many frameworks, right? I mean, let's be frank here. NIST, everything ties back to NIST, right? GDPR, ISO 27000, SOC 2, Type 1, Type 2. I mean, PCI can go on, right? But naturally, it hones into NIST and the controls that the organization is abiding by or implementing. And naturally, another good one for organizations that are not industry agnostic, right? For example, federal government, of course, all day, every day they use NIST. Financials is PCI, DSS, ISO, GLBA, so it's following those type of frameworks that, keeps them in the compliancy standpoint. But naturally going into an organization like manufacturing, right? Like Center of Internet Security is a good example. Version 8, it really tells a story, for having identification and authentication, or some type of security awareness program, some type of, configuration. I can go on and on with the controls and not to go deep dive, but really it's going in that organization and understand, let's say they don't even have anything or a program in place, but coming in as a subject matter expert, we know that which framework may meet best for them, right? And naturally in public and private sectors, at least in the United States, it's sort of the wild west for cyber until federal enforces. And I think that's happening soon, maybe. No.
Yeah, your note on, you start from the top down, it definitely resonates with me. And I think, that concept of cyber risk is, we always often say, compromise is a matter of when, the way that, businesses are being run these days.
Sure.
Maybe part of that equation, but we also say that cybersecurity is a 50-year-old ground war that we're struggling with it, right? And so there's this new air war evolving of what really are, regulatory changes, cyber laws, these sorts of things that they're trying to hold executives and board members accountable for. So tying into that, all these regulations, what is your biggest challenge in meeting the regulatory requirements today?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, George. It's, at the end of the day, it goes down to the business owners of the company, board of directors, C-level executives, plus the resources, whether they have the subject matter experts to successfully execute a program, for example, right? And especially in our world, right, as big as it is, we're a very, very small community, right? So how do we go out and help them understand the importance of, protecting their data, for example, and so them seeing the challenges from that standpoint? I'm sure both of you have experienced it as well. Like, I mean, we could sell all day long, right? That's great, fine, hire a vCISO, hire some expert to come in, or hire even a CISO, right? It's interesting, CISOs are having a very much tough time, rock in a hard place, right? Because they're held liable if a company gets breached, and that's not fair to them. So you understand the amount of stress that they go through every day, because if there's a breach and the fear of getting attacked, and really it's everyone in the company that should be held liable. I mean, if an employee, again, going back to the classic phishing link example, happens all the time, And then sometimes they hide it, or sometimes, typically, yeah, you got to report it to your IT department or your security department. And again, those are the challenges. And I hope you agree, security is all over the place. Either it's under IT, it's under security department that has physical security and legal and fraud. And anyways, it's an own, I hope both of you agree, it is its own entity. It always has been. Being under IT is keeping the lights on. And that's another scenarios I'm running into, even especially when I left corporate world, they had the security operations under infrastructure engineering under IT, like, and the CISO was part of the board. Well,
Yeah, no,
I mean,
I can relate.
We see that definitely.
it's
See
like,
it, me
well,
too.
why are you putting a CISO under a CR? Put everybody together, have its own business unit or department, and let them do its thing. Because yes, I get it. Maybe CISO's under a CIO or a CTO. They're very technical. They're not going to understand cyber, right? We understand it not just technical, but also from a very strategic standpoint, because you got to understand their business first in order to actually help and guide them in building a successful program, right? Anyways, my 2 cents.
So is there really a solution out there that you've seen or that you've implemented to well, let's face it, eradicate the bad behavior happening at the board level or in the C-suite, and they may not even be aware of the fact that they have the bad behavior because they need the education, right? Because you remember, it's tops down, right?
Yeah,
So
no,
down, what do you do? How do you do that, right?
well, that's a great question. So typically when I do speak to any potential clients or someone that just wants a consultation, naturally what I do is I really listen and hear them and learn everything about their business, not just do my research and due diligence, but understand some of the challenges and frustrations that they're facing, right? Because they're not going to understand our world. I know there was an article posted back in June of this year. I forgot, it was like Forbes or one of those big ones, but saying that Fortune 500s are starting to recognize to bring somebody from a cyber background to their board, right? That's amazing.
Right.
I mean, that's a big news for us, because whether they hire somebody fractional basis or not, it doesn't matter. Bring the expert in that understands it. A board that board is mostly process, right? They're process folks. All they look at is process, how it's working, how it's not. This has been working from time to time, but now let's look at some other avenues, and they come from many different backgrounds. They may have served in many other boards, but you bring in a strategic person with some technical background. Oh boy, you have someone that can actually come and help them, because now they have the ability to speak, rather than putting a CISO in that role who's very, very technical, A, or B, very, very compliancy. Like, I'm assuming that that's really most of CISO's background, and sometimes you get the mix of the two, which is unique. But again, that's just giving you some of the feedback as far as what I've been seeing. I know about you guys of what you've been experiencing as well. So,
yeah. Well, we've seen a mixture, but of, well, let's just confess what we've seen, right? So we have there's always two groups in the executive suite, right? Those that believe and those that do not. And whether it's because culture and mindset, or if they believe their footprint of cybersecurity is addressed,
sure.
Is another thing. But ultimately, we see these CEOs, CFO, any C-suite member. It's not just the CISO, right? When you start talking about risk, and generally they're going to want to be involved. The whole C-suite likes to be involved in three kinds of discussions: those that increase revenue, those that reduce costs, and those that address substantial risk.
Sure.
And so what we find is that you have these executives in the not on board area who are like, hey, my ground war guys got it, as I referenced the cybersecurity ground war before, sure, right? But they don't necessarily realize that there's an air war happening in regulatory compliance, call it data privacy laws, what have you, emerging, that they need to be aware of, or they don't take it seriously, right? The ones that are looking at it going, hey, this is important because I'm potentially personally accountable with some of these laws, they're in that group, that other group of yeses. Those that are in the yes group, even if they have an incident, we've seen those situations of regulatory acceptance minimize damage, and if there is risk involved, it's addressed. But those that are in the other group, those are the kinds where we get that call that no cybersecurity CEO or cyber risk, whatever you're doing in this industry, never wants to get, which is the help. I know what you're going to say, that I told you so, and yeah, you told me so, I'm wrong, I messed up, right? We don't want that call,
Yeah,
right?
no.
And so is there a solution, right? What, and I think that's it. How are things going now in
Yeah,
terms
no,
of the
it's,
two
you
different
know,
groups? We know what the doubters are
yeah.
like,
Well,
right?
that's, you're bringing up you're just hitting some great points, because again, we've seen it all, right?
Mhm.
So how do we go back to them from a very strategic level, right? And I don't know if you've noticed this, or other organizations, or folks that are focused in our realm, in our world, to where, how do you prove cybersecurity is a sound return on security investment, right? Or a ROSI, right? I'm sure both of you know and understand, of course, with grabbing of, or sorry, with the collection of a few data points, like the cost of their assets, or servers, networks, yada yada, and let's say the different business units that they have. And actually, this is one of my deliverables, not selling you, but I'm just giving you the idea that let's say their HR department, and after doing a scan, the C-suite and board of directors, they do not want to know what a CVE is, or do they care? They could care less, right? To them, in our world, a high finding is like, whoa, right? But in their world, a high finding doesn't equate to dollars. So how do you go to them and tell them a story? Well, Mr. and Miss CEO, or Mr. and Miss board of directors, that your HR department would have, if your HR department got breached, let's say it was rated out of 8 out of 10, meaning it's at the high risk level, that it would have cost them about 300,000 if they got breached. Now that's just the baseline. That's not including loss of customers, loss of employees because they got breached. Because everybody's scrambling the company. Doesn't mean that folks are going to stop using the service, right? The driving service. You guys know who I'm talking about. Just because they got breached doesn't mean that people are going to stop using them, right? I mean, it just, again, it's what the company, right, at what level they're at as far as data breach or data leakage. So naturally, that's just giving you an example that when you show them the data, and it doesn't have to be in a SaaS or an application, it's hard facts, then it gets their attention, because they're like, wait a minute, you're saying I can lose a couple $1,000,000? Yeah, that's just the base. So a formula and a gathering of few data points, you can easily calculate that. Sort of puts you in that accounting realm, but not really, right? And now you're showing them, here's your risk level. So they're seeing actual hard numbers, and all the technical information stays with their technical team if they have one, or they outsource it through an MSP, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, and I think you're going to see, changes coming in terms of the mindset of the larger companies. Definitely, I think the one thing that we have learned is that there is a front of risk mitigators, primarily in legal, that are trying to pursue the market and talk to CEOs about how they need to have and the boards as well, what they're going to need to do. And I think perhaps there's three messages that we tend to hear from these attorneys, tech and privacy attorneys mainly.
Yeah, no, it's it's funny that you say attorneys, right? Because yes, they're in like either corporate law, or they follow a specific path, right? And they're in their career fields past because it's according by a law that this must be followed, ethical, yada yada. You get it. Same thing with the accounting field. But I think cybersecurity is kind of getting into that realm where it's regulations, certain acts and laws that are coming into fruition, and even combination of some number crunching. And because especially at the board and C-level, it's very strategic at the end of the day. You can talk technical to them all day long. They're just going to turn you off in a heartbeat, and that's just the truth, right? Here's another example. I'm sure, are you both aware that SEC proposed rules on cybersecurity risk management, governance, and incident disclosure by public companies? They released this in March 9th of 2022 of this year. I believe it's going to get passed. That's a game changer though for our industry, because now in the United States, at least, they're enforcing that you report a breach. And I hope both of you agree that experiencing a breach is not a bad thing. It's a lessons learned. And a lot of companies just, they start just like things running around their head, or a dog running, or, trying to chase its tail. I mean, if you had put some preventative measures or hired not even a resource, like even as a cybersecurity subject matter expert, then they could have had all of these things in place, including the technologies, including the compliance. Educating your employees are the most important. I hope both of you agree, because employees, especially at the top, they'll search some sites, maybe they get bored. I'm just, it doesn't matter. I'm not, no judgments here. You do what you do. But my point is that this happens all day, every day, and I hope both of you can agree on this. So, anyways,
Yeah, agreed. I think what we look for, though, and I think are pretty simple signs. And generally speaking, there's quite a few. There's a lot of people in leadership that are out there that have the mindset of, "Uh-oh, here's a risk. I'm going to address it." And if it starts to become substantial or revenue impacting, or there's cost increases, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty. Like when marketing has an issue, they know enough about marketing to lead that. And then if operations has an issue, you know, as a CEO, you know how to lead that. But when it comes to IT, there's a percentage of CEOs out there. I'm not going to say how, you know, what I think the percentage is, but I think it's pretty high.
Yeah.
Oh, it's got a blinking light, toss it over the fence to IT, and they run the other way. Right. I think that's part of the problem. But, you know, what I do know is that these guys don't go, they don't go to events. They don't go to, you know, events at all. They have to count on their leaders to educate them. And that's, I think, where a lot of the things tend to fall down, is that to change that mindset of that CEO, listen, you have to learn this. And I think what's happening in the Fortune, you have to help the tech team, just like you helped all these other leaders that report to you. I think that's what's changing because of the regulations.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to understand is that's just the top. This stuff's it's going to take forever to cascade down to all the other mid-sized businesses and small businesses, and it's just going to, you know, it's going to create years of frustration and incidents. And so we're trying to find the light at the end of that tunnel, whether it is how you're doing things now, the events that you attend, what books do you tell executives to consider or read, even if it's the Blinkist version, you know, that 15-minute version we put, right? You know,
Well,
what do you think these guys, right?
What's the saying? You know, you lead a water to horse, and it's up to the horse to drink it or not. So these are the scenarios that I'm sure all three of us run into, right? And it's interesting because the CEO has a lot of responsibility, right? Even in our own companies, right? Where, you know, we come up with some of these challenges and try to say, okay, how do we solve these challenges? And that's really what we're doing, going to these companies and just listening to their challenges. And you get the CEO that wants to be jack of all trades and master of none. This happens all the time. I mean, even, you know, we become culprits ourselves, but not in a bad sense, because then now we realize, okay, what do we need to focus on? What worked, what did not, right? And you know, and again, having a conversation with the C-level executive, at least for me, it's the easiest conversation, not just because they're at the top, because they make the executive decisions to successfully run that business, regardless of what industry. And the beauty of cybersecurity, it applies to every single industry. It doesn't matter if somebody comes to me and says, oh, you know, Ranbir, we don't have sensitive information, but well, what about your human resources and social security number from your employees, or the identification number, or address, you know, like a lot of personal information is there. So it's like, how are you protecting that? Oh, we have it on a Dropbox. Okay, well, I mean, even in law firms, 10, 15, $20 million contracts, how are you storing? Oh, it's a Google Drive. Do you have MFA enabled? Oh, I don't know. Okay, well, I mean, and it is over. This can go over and over in our head because we've seen it. And we try to help. Like sometimes I feel like, you know, somebody's advisor or therapist here at this scenario, but really it's not about closing the deal or grabbing the sale or becoming their virtual CISO, because, you know, every client is unique in its own as far as how you're trying to help them. Now, if they're willing to listen to you, because remember, you're coming in as the expert, not the other way around, right? They're looking for you. It's like like legal counsel. Do the CEOs try to, or the board of directors try to say, okay, well, let's look up the law books that has like, it's 1,000-page law book of corporate law, for example. They're not going to go there and read it. You're paying for that, right? And I think that's where we're going, right? Like, again, you know, once it's enforced and the acts come about in US, I mean, it's going to be a game changer, and the culture of cybersecurity is changing. And I hope you both are seeing that as well.
So along those lines, then, what excites you about the future of cybersecurity then?
I think we're just getting warmed up. it took about 20 years. I hope both of you agree. AV wasn't a solution for security because it was still part of IT. Antivirus, right? Classic, like, oh yeah, we have antivirus, and oh no, we have a SIM now, from DARPA days, if both of you remember or recall. But it's definitely changing, and not just even having technologies in place. Well, how do you even know that technology is secure, right? Like, you have all these companies selling SaaS, and they don't even have half of that stuff secure, or they're whitelisting a lot of that, so they're using even another third party to sell something, right? So it's like, and startups, let's be honest, security is not the first thing to think about, and maybe that might change. I don't know.
Possibly.
Yeah, I think when we talk about excitement, right? There's definitely quite a few, and I have to concede, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's not about the technology, right? It's beyond the technology. It's the footprint of technology that the technical teams are generally going to be working through. It's how do you address the behavior and the mindset of the executive team to kind of adopt a culture of cyber risk awareness, and often, oh, security awareness training, yes, you can send everybody through a bunch of classes, right? But how are they really going to listen, right? Are you sending the right message as an executive that makes sure people are doing the right thing, especially when nobody's watching, and that they own those responsibilities, so those responsibilities own them as well.
Yeah, those are excellent points that you're bringing out, right? So let's hone in on zero trust architecture, right? NIST pushed that out not long ago. So every company was scrambling to say, okay, well, we're zero trust, and I hope both of you agree that it's not an actual technology, it's a concept.
It's
right?
a mindset, yeah.
And it's a mindset. Yeah, let's go back to our Active Directory days and lock down everybody's access and not even give them access out to the web. Good luck with that, right? Anyways, my point is that the World Wide Web, you could call it, is a very dangerous place, because sometimes that's a lot of sites that are malicious out there. There's billions and trillions of domains out there now. So how do you keep track of all of that, or at least limit access to your employees? Again, going back to the zero trust concept, right? So that's one aspect of it. The whole, and again, I believe zero trust, somebody was telling me that it stemmed out of Russia, and I forgot the gentleman who was originally created the theoretical component of it, but literally is somebody standing next to you watching what you're doing. So, but put it in terms of being here, at least in the United States and perhaps Canada. But my point is that, okay, well, the zero trust is like, okay, trust your employees to just have limited access to do their work, right? So putting my technical hat on, and well, why don't you give them virtual machines that are locked down and give them access to applications that they only need, that don't even go out to the web, right? You could build that right now through, let's say, and not selling them, but AWS is one big vendor. There's many others out there, but that's the idea, right? Limit access, especially mostly everybody's working from home. So you would assume that the ISPs or internet service providers that they have, the big names, telecom companies have those protections. Yeah, I'm sure they have internal teams that's monitoring that stuff, but always add another layer, right? And again, employees may not be too thrilled about that, but then that gives you more relief at the top to say, okay, well, now they're accessing what they need to do their work and not just surfing the web all day, if that's what people do. I don't know. I'm just giving you scenarios, right?
Yeah. I imagine that there's that there's quite a few service providers that are out there, and there's different types as well. When we talk about the large service providers, that's where I come from. I come from what essentially was a backbone engineering design function, and at what was once Vario NTT years ago, and that was, service providers are unique in the sense that when they're doing an IT function, the traditional IT function, right? Those engineers and people who work for that's revenue producing. So you believe me, there's support on things going down, things staying secure, right? But for the customers and users that are using that service, it's meant to be neutral, right? So internet is supposed to be neutral and free, traditional sense. So you do wonder from a service provider perspective, whether it be, and I lump in software as a service providers, IT service providers, integrators, professional service providers, right? And content companies that are providing content services into the service provider category, in my mind.
Yeah,
And
no
so
doubt. Yeah, no,
so I often wonder, when you get into enterprises, right, that are maybe going through digital transformation, part of the cultural problem is that might be this issue of, well, I manufacture a widget,
yeah,
I have to ship it, right? That's what produces revenue for me. But yeah, IT cost centers and those sorts of things, that's such cost. I've had situations where I've had leadership from CFO to CEO, especially the CFOs. They see the IT leadership groups and they go, "Oh, I don't like you guys. You cost me money." And so part of that function are we really in a losing battle when it comes to these organizations that haven't adopted the reality that we're living in an internet delivered world and how important it is to them?
well, yeah, no, that's those are great points. I don't believe we're in a losing battle. We're just in that battle that finally is getting some recognition. I hope both of you agree, to where even I think NSA posted something not too long ago in regards to an act for cybersecurity. So it's happening. It just took time, right? I mean, I guess if you go back in time, I mean, of course, I didn't experience the past, but assuming where roles like lawyers and accountants, because, let's say the development and built of an infrastructure, an environment that had all these policies, procedures, acts, etc., right? Because technology, I would say it's still new, even though it's been around for a long time, right? But we're getting to a point to where, okay, where are some of the breaking points as far as what we're doing and our mission and cause? I just say continue to keep at it, because things are going to change, and there's just not, again, there's not enough of us. And I mean, there's over like in US 3 million jobs for cyber. How are they going to fill that, right? And most of these jobs want some experience. I mean, you get a college graduate, how are they really going to get in unless they interned for that company, right? And it's just, those are some of the challenges, yeah. But there's something bigger that's happening, and I don't know if both of you are seeing the shift too a little bit. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, we are.
So, Ranbir, tell us a little bit more about yourself. I understand you're located in Virginia.
Yeah, no, definitely. I guess I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. No, I'm just kidding. So us CEOs say that, right? Anyways, jokes aside, I've been in the cyber industry for about 20 years. I was fortunate enough to basically work everywhere from an individual contributor of security operations, engineering, to incident response, insider threat, all the way up to the CISO level. So naturally, I saw something bigger here because I've been in the industry. Naturally, yes, working in the corporate world was great. I'm truly blessed to have been in that world. But in order for me to tell my story, I had to branch away and build my company, which was August 31st of 2020. So start a company during a pandemic, great. Can't go to events, can't touch cardboard, can't, everything literally was had to be virtual, and LinkedIn has definitely been one of my biggest saviors here. But the least to say that if building a company is easy, George, everybody would do it. And John,
Most definitely.
That's for sure.
But no, it's been a very interesting journey, and I think both of you will start to see there's going to be definitely a lot more traction. In our world, you don't know what you don't know unless you speak to someone about it, right? If cybersecurity was never a thought, right? Especially like manufacturing, Internet of Things, they're getting hammered right now. I mean, I've seen through one of my business partners, he's the CEO also of a manufacturing firm. They have a bunch of clients, and the diagrams literally have their machines connected to switches, no layer of protect, no firewalls, like no joke. I don't know if you've seen those type of diagrams, and I mean, you get attacked easily, and that's it. You're down $1 million because that's all microbes. You have a like a very limited lifespan, and they have to clean those machines, and just becomes bigger. It becomes an administrative nightmare, for, at least for that for that manufacturing firm, right? So,
Yeah,
but yeah, that's my my background, and you know, I'm going full force. You know, again, the consulting and services, you know, it has its challenges, but again, I mean, SBA has over $30.2 million businesses registered. So I think there's plenty of business out there, you know, and even some medium sized and larger, but even the larger businesses, I think, yeah, they have CISOs in place. My goal is not to replace the CISO, it's to come and support them and guide them into success, right? Or at least get through to the board or C-level executives that they may have been challenged to right now, right? So just give me an idea.
Yeah.
And tell us something about your education. Where'd you go to school?
Yeah, no.
Where'd you get all this great knowledge?
You know, usually in school it's dated 7 to 10 years back, right? So all that knowledge you learn, but you know, same principles and concepts always, right? At the end of the day, I went to University of Maryland, Baltimore County, graduated 2003 in December, and then pursued my master's about 10 years later, 2013, at University of Maryland Global Campus in cybersecurity. I have about 2 graduate certifications, again, all relevant to what I'm doing now probably, but no security certifications. And those are important, of course, you know, whatever floats your boat, and you know, whatever can get you into an opportunity, of course. Certifications do tell a story that, you know, you're expert in knowledge, but of course, sometimes output may not be that great, right? So it all depends on you know, what things you're good at in general, right? So,
and then of course, where did you gain your wisdom?
oh, that's a great question. I guess with time comes wisdom.
Hard knocks.
And dumping right into, you know, and again, this is just to share a little history. This 4th company I started, right? You know, the previous ones were basically lessons learned to my success today, right? So, but you know, again, you know, just trial and error and meetings, great folks like you know, you too, and just, you know, just spreading the word and getting to know folks. I think, you know, it builds over time. I hope both of you agree. So
yeah, we all must fail to know a success, right?
failure is not an option, George. And John, you know, if all else fails, go back to corporate world, right? Not that's not, I'm not going back to corporate world, but not that it was a bad experience. I think it was an experience that led me to here, right? And I think sometimes it takes time for you to see or vision that, if that makes sense. So
yeah, I can relate.
And Ranbir, if you go back in time and give your younger self some advice and wisdom, what would that be?
Tune out the noise. Boom. That's it. Tune out the noise. Focus.
What do you mean by noise?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. We've all been in corporate world, and we all have dealt with the dramatics, and we've all dealt with he said, she said, Sally and Harry said. And I think, you know, when you sort of move away from that and focus on your own success to where you want to be, that's growth, right? And I think that if I go back to my younger self, I would just tell myself to just keep my mouth shut and listen and don't talk much. And that definitely will get you places, as opposed to, you know, the loudest person in the room is typically not the person that's excelling. And in my opinion, at least, I could be wrong. I'm just sharing you with at least my younger self. Trust me, I learned through a lot of rocks and stones and rumble and brick walls to get to this point. And it was like, okay, well, you know, if you want to build success in your life, always be passionate about it and love what you do. That's really very important, right? That's the way I see it.
And speaking about passions, what are you passionate about outside of work?
Oh yeah, no, you know, it's definitely like spending time with my family. I like to sometimes build some model cars. You know, my son's crazy about this Pokemon, so you know, every day he's been wanting a different Pokemon. You know, I should be investing in the company that owns it, whoever owns it, maybe Microsoft owns it. Anyways, my point is that you know, definitely, you know, spending time with family is very important. Just having that well-balanced life. I don't think working 10 to 12 hour days is quite at least for me is quite effective. You know, I'd say, okay, well, you know, outside of work, just focus on things that you love to do, like listening to music, or maybe like earlier you mentioned, like, I like to go my runs and just kind of just get, get some nature in your, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, just, do those type of things, and really sometimes just break yourself away from business for a moment, right? So hope both of you do the same. So
Definitely.
Yeah, we do. I know that I can relate to the Pokemon thing, really. I've had 3 kids, right? And so one was train tracks. I can't remember what they're called. I'm trying to forget because they were so expensive.
So many names, and yeah, they are.
What?
If you think about it, like when I used to watch Pokemon, and I probably was in my 20s then, not that age matters, but like some of those cards are worth like hundreds and thousands of dollars. I didn't think to collect them. I just watched the show. And then my son's like, did you ever collect Pokemon? I was like, no, I collected baseball and basketball cards, and Michael Jordan days and Cal Ripken Jr., if you guys have followed. But the point was, like, it's a binder somewhere in my parents' house that I told my son, just ask my mother, because I have 3, right? I have my oldest 11, a daughter that's 8, and a baby that just turned 1 on December 1st. No, we're done. But I'm just saying,
Congratulations.
Yeah,
George, we got a village of kids.
yeah. I've got 20, 16, and 6.
Oh,
So,
wow. So you still got
yeah.
So don't worry, I'll be there in a couple of years.
But that journey of spending time with family, and each one can be so different, but
Well,
you roll with the punches when you got to take the pocketbook out, and
Well,
Pokemon, and I can relate to how some of those things can get a little expensive. So
yeah, no, I mean, and it's that they're their own people, and they're figuring it out, and we're there to guide and lead them to their own success. And at this point in time, I believe our kids' generations, it's going to be very different than at least the way we were raised, right? Like, just to share with you, dad was pretty strict, mom was pretty strict, right? Like, get your degree, get your education, become successful, right? That's just giving you some of my background. So
Absolutely understood that.
Yep.
Well, Ranbir, so tell me, how can people get in touch with you?
Oh yeah, sure. Either they can visit my website or connect with me on LinkedIn, right?
Okay.
I mean, do you want me to post my my link?
Sure, that would be great.
Yeah, let me just do
And,
that.
and go ahead and tell us what is your website?
Yeah, sure. I'll post that too. CyberCulture LLC.com. Hopefully, I can get rid of that LLC. But domains are limited, unfortunately, or they'll cost you an arm and a leg. Both of you know that. Sometimes.
And do you have any personal websites or anything else that we should be aware of?
No, just business website and LinkedIn. Really, just that's really where it starts. And I that's how we all connected here, which was pretty cool. You meet so many phenomenal folks, and I'm definitely blessed to have met both of you and doing this podcast. It's pretty cool. So.
All right. Well, Ranbir, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. This is one of our first shows that we're going to be producing, and we appreciate your time. And to our audience, thank you for listening. Hope you learned something today, laughed or something, and please feel free to tell a friend about this. And
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, sounds good. All right, John, George, pleasure meeting both of you.
Thank you all for joining another great episode of Pineapple on Pizza. You can find show notes, links, and resources by visiting omnistruct.com/blog. And a huge thank you to all who are preventatively protecting organizations from cyber threats.